Wait for a few people. Great. Wonderful. Oh, good. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to the reading. This is Professor Mario Daganji. I'm Jesse. This is Nathan Winkelstein, who played the Cardinal impromptu tonight. Thank you for staying for the conversation. Mario.
Yeah, I just have a friend. I just want to make sure that she didn't leave.
That's okay. We'll see you later.
Join the party. I'll come right back.
Okay, great. Mario, so you know this play pretty well, and let me ask you a question about Webster himself, because someone just asked me this question, and they said, was Webster? What do we know about Webster as a writer and as a person, and was he just a really twisted dude?
Well, you're like in Shakespeare in Love, they have him obsessed with killing little animals or something like that.
Well, hold that thought for a second. Let me just introduce Matthew Rauch, who played Bosala.
That was wonderful. Well, so the thing about Webster, to put him in a bit of context, right? In the decade before he writes Duchess of Malfi, Shakespeare is writing tragedies with titles like Macbeth and King Lear and Othello and Timon of Athens and Coriolanus. And Webster comes along, and he is writing in this tradition of revenge tragedy, which was kind of a known genre ever since the 1580s with Thomas Kyd and the Spanish tragedy. So it's not like he's doing anything that's that wild just in terms of genre, but one obvious innovation he does is he bases this tragedy on a woman. And Shakespeare does not write tragedies. He writes Antony, Cleopatra, and Romeo and Juliet. So the two tragedies he writes that center on women are love tragedies. They're part of a couple. He makes the Duchess of Malfi. So one of the notable things about Webster for me, and the other play that he wrote that's very well known, he wrote a few plays, but the other one that's best known is called The White Devil. And it's also a play set in Italy based on court intrigue. So he's fascinated by court intrigue and the kind of perverse life of flattery and deception and power plays. But in this particular play, he's really interested in the idea of a female tragic hero where the kind of heroic action that she undergoes is to get married. So she has that wonderful speech where she says, I would make all my kinsmen my footsteps, and I'm going to do this risky venture. I think she calls it a dangerous venture. So marrying, which as she later says is I'm not inventing a new custom, but given the context, she's going to take this heroic action of marrying a man of lower social status. So I do think, even though there are some obviously bizarre things about Webster, like the lycanthropy and so forth, that he's really drawing on this tradition and taking it in a slightly different direction by focusing on what a female tragic hero could do. And that's, to me, what makes this play so wonderful. So
that's very helpful. Thank you. I think I just open it up to questions from the audience, and any questions or comments that any of you have for us. We can just talk if you like. Yes, sir.
Just wonderful job. I think it's really brilliant. Just a question about the stage reading as distinct from performance, to the extent that there's distinction. Was there anything about the process of revisiting the play and engaging it as a staged reading and performative reading that illuminated aspects of the text and or performance features of the play as performed in ways that were surprising or that opened up the play in new ways to you that were unexpected?
Thank you for asking that question, and I'm just going to repeat it because the microphones are here.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's all right. So if I have your question right, what you're asking is, for myself and those of us who were involved in the production that we did a dozen years ago of this play, was there anything about doing it as a staged reading that illuminated the text in new and refreshing ways?
The text and or even performance. Staging aspects as well,
Yeah, well, let me just, I'll say one thing. I mean, just revisiting the text a dozen years later, it was really illuminating just to revisit it, frankly, just as a text, as opposed to something that was going to be conceived that had to have, how are we going to solve this? The vision of the dead children and the husband, or the vision of all those things that happen spectacularly, and we had to kind of conceive spectacle to make that work in the theater. But doing it this way, first of all, I was refreshed by how hauntingly beautiful funny, twisted, strange, but metaphysically fascinating the language itself is. And some of that can get lost in production. When we're doing it on a reading on a stage like this, it's really just comes to life and you're just allowed to let it wash over you orally. And that led, I think, to more humor than you might find in a production, which is also, I think, great. Those are two things that come to mind for me. I don't know if, Matt, maybe you want to take the...
I found interest. I loved doing this play 12 years ago, and I actually had done it previously. And I love this play. I had a really interesting experience today. The play felt very, very relevant to me today about ownership and self-determination and the ability to make your own choices in your life, to be whoever you want to be. As long as you're not hurting anybody else, you should be able to do what you want to do. And that's a theme that is very present in our world today. And it's a lot of the play is about status and who hasn't and who doesn't, and this idea of Antonio and Bosola, who are sort of rivals at the beginning of the play, and the Duchess being constrained by her very powerful brothers, even though she's the one with all the money. It's a very interesting play about power and levels of power, and I was very taken by it. It's also interesting you ask it. Jesse said to me after we do these readings and we rehearse for 4 hours. That's it. And so it's always very quick, and it's always very like, go to that music stand and figure it out, and just figure it out. It's sort of that vibe. But one of the interesting things...
That was an actual note I gave. Figure that out.
Yeah. And that's great. And it makes it sort of fun, and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen. Let's go out there. And they're watching on the internet, and let's just do it. And that's great, because it's a great cast, and it's a really fun group. But one of the things that he said to me privately after we rehearsed, I hope you don't mind repeating
No, I don't remember what it was.
Oh, you don't remember? Typical.
No,
he said the thing that is so striking to me is the simplicity of the play. We did all of this stuff, and it was, I don't know if you saw the production, it was a huge set, and there was a lot of stuff going on, smoke and music and gunshots and blood and people and ghosts and crazy dance sequences, and all of that stuff is in some way totally unnecessary to the play. There's an incredible sort of distillation in this format of just the play itself and people trying to interact on stage. And sometimes we succeed and sometimes we don't in this environment, which is very challenging for its own reasons. But the purity of the play and the simplicity of the play really comes through in this environment. And I think we felt that today in particular.
So. Yeah, intimacy of the play.
Yeah, right. And the intimacy of this venue,
Sure.
Yeah. Other questions? Or
this is a great space for this play, I have to say.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. What was it like for you, Kelly? Was this your first time experiencing the Duchess?
Yes. I had read it years and years and years ago. I was telling Jesse this morning, but I hadn't really read it as a grown person until he asked me to join, and it was shocking. It was shocking how immediate it felt, and this struggle for sovereignty over one's choices and one's body, and how obsessed the characters are with her body, and how much that comes up over and over again. It was just, it kind of just strikes you right in that spot, and also just I was sitting here just now thinking, it hadn't actually struck me in rehearsal, but she's a character of such astonishing faith, actually, from start to finish. She says, I'm going to do this anyway, and I'm going to go for it, and everything that is important to her is witnessed by God, especially when they have like a priest in the family. Like, she's the one that seems to be really this spiritual person, and all the questions she has about, like, do you think I'll see you in the other life? Do you think we'll know each other? I hope when we meet in the other life we don't part in this way. She's investigating her faith the whole way through, and she keeps it, which is incredible. And that the last word she says is mercy when she finds out that Antonio is alive. It's not, irony to
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
He's alive, and that is good.
I'm really struck by the fact that you said that, because I was embarrassed to say this, but I was also really struck coming to this play later in my life by the religiousness of the play, the constant references to heaven and hell and sin, and I was really struck particularly by you saying to your brother, if you violate a sacrament of the church, you will burn in hell. Bozola, a person who does not act religiously in the play, says to her, "Fie, you are a Christian." There's a lot of references to religion in the play, and I'm not a person of faith, frankly, but I was very struck at an interesting point in my own life by the amount of faith in the play. Also,
Yeah.
we should do this play together.
We should.
Good idea.
Sign me up.
Yes. I agree.
Just a thought, Matthew. When Renaissance preachers, when they talked about conscience, the concept of conscience, a famous definition of that concept by a guy called William Perkins, who was kind of a Puritan preacher, he said it's like God in our hearts. It's like conscience is like the voice of God that is in our hearts. And it really struck me that the word conscience first appears in the play after...
Oh, my conscience.
Right. And it's that moment of conversion where you kind of because what you said before about self-determination, it's that moment where you say, I'm going to do what I think is right. I'm going to, disobey my masters. I'm not just going to be about self-promotion. I'm going to do what I think the right thing is. And it's that moment that he uses that word conscience, which really is kind of like a religious conversion almost, in a way for him, for that character.
It's a very challenging character. I've struggled with it before, and I struggled with it tonight. There is a really complex journey that he goes on, and the levels of deception are not easily. The onion is not easily peeled in 4 hours.
Yeah, but some of I think some of what we're talking about has to do with what you touched on earlier, which is Delio's final line: "Integrity of life is fame's best friend," or people being able to be true to who their true selves are. And if Bosola, who's been kept down because of his class, and whatever the history of bad relations are between him and the cardinal, he's kept him down out of what his talents and abilities could rise to, and so he has to navigate his way through society. And the same is true for obviously the Duchess, being kept from being her true self, from her true love. Antonio, similarly, they have a real natural love, we believe, Antonio and the Duchess, but is being forced apart. And so, this is back to one should be able to follow one's own path in the universe. And I think Webster is trying to say that. And at the end, he says, well, integrity of life is fame's best friend. That the most important thing one can be is be full of integrity, as well as be able to have the fullness of integrity of following your own star, I think.
There's also an interesting thing about the true path. I was struck in many ways by the play tonight, but I remember being shocked by this when we did the play 12 years ago, and being shocked again tonight when Ferdinand says, she and I were twins. Yeah. They're twins, which you don't know. It's an incredible reveal in the fifth act of this play. And usually Jacobean tragedies don't have incredible reveals in the fifth act. So Webster is also, I think, dramaturgically doing something that's actually quite rare, which is like, oh, by the way, there's a big secret here. They're not just brother and sister, they're twins. And there's a whole spiritual... I remember reading about this when we originally did the play, and I think we might have talked about this. There's a whole sort of spiritual element to twinship in the Renaissance, in the 17th century. Twins were thought to be sort of magical, mystical things, connected forever. And I love that thing where Ferdinand says, if I died now, we'd live exactly the same amount.
Yeah.
She's his older sister by 30 seconds. Right. It's such a crazy twist at the end of the play.
And in a weird way, by killing her, he's killed himself.
Yes.
And he goes mad, and it's, in the next scene, he's mad. Yes.
I do think it's interesting talking about the religion and the belief and the mystic and all of that, in this version, the younger brother, the cardinal actually, until the very end, is the least religious, has the least faith.
He seems to have belief in the religion, the infrastructure. But he's much more utilitarian. He's much more he's like, how dare she utilize my infrastructure to protect herself? I will utilize my infrastructure to take all of her stuff and give it to me. Right? He doesn't start talking about heaven or hell or morality until right near the end. And he's quite concerned by it when it happens. It's quite a surprise to him when he's like, wait a minute, I don't feel good anymore about my actions.
Says the guy who's carrying around a poisoned Bible.
Just in case.
He seems to have more in common with the classical, the Elizabethan view of the Pope and the cardinals. But there is, you started us off, Mara. This is a story that's based on a true story.
It is.
Is it?
Yeah, it is based on a true story. And I was reading too.
I don't know about the poisoned Bible part.
Yeah, but apparently from what we know, it is true that the Duchess had a child with Antonio that was secret. And I was thinking, how could they keep these 3 children secret? But one of the things that it makes you think of is, you don't really see this in the play, but the Duchess has an enormous estate, and she has servants, and there's ways to hide things and use her influence. I mean, the interesting thing about the twinship, I was thinking of that moment when she was imprisoned and Basila comes to talk to her, and she just starts raging and cursing. And it's reminded me of Ferdinand earlier in the play when he finds out, and he's raging and cursing, and the cardinal's So there are those connections between the Duchess and Ferdinand that, it helps to explain in part the irrationality of his obsession with her body and wanting to control her. That we don't quite understand, why is he so invested in her, aside from misogyny and other things, because the cardinal certainly isn't emotionally invested in her in the same way.
Right. You said something in your note, Mara.
Yeah.
I think I'm stealing this thought from you. We tend to admire the Duchess for her willingness to, damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead, love conquers all. But it's Marlovian also. It's like a Marlowe. It's like the act of. I don't know if the Jacobean audiences would have applauded her. They would have said, she's going out of bounds.
It is a kind of
She's doing something crazy.
It is, and in fact, we get an internal cue to that when Cariola, right after the little marriage scene, and she says, "I don't know if the spirit of greatness or woman reigns most in her, but I pity her." So, in other words, she's a high status person and she's a woman, and both those kinds of people tend to do things that are a little bit excessive, right? But there's a kind of cue that, this is a really dangerous, imprudent thing that she's doing, even though on some level, because of the beautiful way that he creates the intimacy, and her saying, this is flesh and blood, this isn't a statue, I'm a woman, but still it's a dangerous thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Judy.
So, one comment to Matthew. It's not clear to me why an Elizabethan audience would have thought that a prelate was religious. We are talking Elizabethan England, Wolsey, Cromwell. Are these people religious and spiritual? I don't think so.
I don't think the cardinal is. I think the cardinal's interested in the church and not religion.
Clearly, that the church is a power structure,
But
and when it rivals the throne topples it. But the church is powerful, and then we set this thing in Italy, so it's not even Protestant; it's bad Catholic Italy. Of course, they're going to be corrupt and evil and awful, even worse than our guys.
I mean,
So name a
it's interesting.
cardinal in an Elizabethan play that is a good guy.
Point taken.
So that's one thing. The second thing that I find interesting about your character is you did make which side should I be deceiving? Where do I get my own? I have a very crooked path to get myself to where I belong. So the Duchess had a clean path to get where she wanted. Yeah, it was overreaching, but she knew what she wanted, she could go there. And she had enough power to get there. But Bassano didn't have enough power to get there, so he had to do it more deviously. And then at the point that he decides to go straight and kill the cardinal, who does he kill? it's the dark, not your fault,
Yeah.
but kind of, the fates are against this guy.
And all of them, I think somebody says we are the tennis balls to the
Everybody
stars.
is fates
he
against
does,
them,
wasn't
yes.
he?
Right after it does that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like that line from King Lear where
Exactly.
the blinded Gloucester says, like
Wanton
flies
boys.
to wanton boys, the gods kill us for their sport. And there's even the wanton boys.
Yeah.
So I think he's really thinking of Lear.
He
when
just
he's
saw King
writing.
Lear, yeah.
He just saw King Lear. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of Matthew said, like there are these beautiful, profound, philosophical, metaphysical moments in the play like that are really, striking. So yeah.
Yes, we have time for just one or two more questions. Down here.
I just have a quick technical question about the poison Bible.
Yes.
Is that something realistic, or it doesn't make any sense that a person can carry around a poison Bible without being affected themselves?
I can only speak to it from a theater
I don't
practitioner
believe it.
standpoint.
I don't believe it.
We figured it out when we did the production a
repeat the
dozen years
question?
ago, but I don't know if there's an actual.
This is about whether
research
the
project
Poison
around-
Bible is realistic or fictional
Yeah.
and fantastic.
Well, I don't know. There may be
Realistic,
some
it
history
doesn't
to
make
this.
sense.
No, not at all.
I think we don't know is the short answer. I don't think there's any real history to it other than it's a clever idea to poison a page or
Yeah.
There's
Did
the
Webster,
point there. I mean, in a lot of these plays, there's poison paintings, there's poison crucifixes, and there's a poison Bible. So I think some of it is about the invention of. I don't think this is in the history, the real history of the Duchess of Amalfi, but I think in the Jacobean theater there was a history of competitive invention, like who can come up with the most clever new twist on an old way of telling a story. That's my hypothesis.
I just want to say, when we did it,
Yeah.
it made perfect sense because Patrick, who played the cardinal, wore gloves. And he opened the page,
Yes.
and she kissed the page, and then he closed it and put it back in his pocket.
From what
It
I
made
read, it
perfect
was
sense.
the cover of the Bible that she kissed.
Well, we
Well,
don't.
we're doing a
Dramatic
reading and we
license.
rehearsed for 3 hours, but I'm telling you how we solved the problem. He wore gloves, and he opened it up, she kissed the inside, and then he closed it, and he said, that's
Right.
it, you're done.
And from what I read, Ferdinand is supposed to be really, really having a terrible disease of being a wolf.
Well,
I
he
don't know
believes
whether
he is, yeah.
portrayed that.
He believes he's a wolf. It's the text
But he
explains.
kept digging around in the ground.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. Because he
Did
believes.
Webster say what prompted him to write this kind of play?
No, nope. Just I think in part.
Let's call it. Let's call it.
Entertainment, but what Jesse said is I'm gonna take this tragic genre and this revenge tragedy. I'm gonna do something a little different with it.
Yeah.
And
I would just add, Webster had something to prove because a few years earlier he had written The White Devil, which he thought was the greatest play in the history of Jacobean drama and Elizabethan drama, and it was a complete failure at the Red Bull Playhouse, by the way, right? Am I right? Tanya's nodding her head. I believe so. He had something to prove, and I don't think there's any. I mean, I don't think there's any question that Duchess of Malfi is a better play than The White Devil. But he went to went to a similar source
Can anyone comment on
material.
the Galileo line?
In what way?
Anything you want to say about it? I mean, I was very surprised to hear it.
The questions about the Galileo line, I guess it's just big, it's us putting common new stuff into our current plays, right? It's like just talking about this cool telescope thing.
Yeah, but it's something about, I can't remember how when
He's
the line comes up, he's talking about fate and
Trying
the
to find,
stars.
he's
right?
talking about trying to find women
Constant
on a different planet who might
Oh,
not
yes.
be
I
cheaters.
would need Galileo's telescope to
Right.
find that out. So, I mean, we would need the Webb telescope to find an honest woman. I don't know any other way to explain it than what Nathan just said. Last question. Any last questions over here? Anything? Well, thank you all very much. Thank you online very much. And thank you very much. Thank you, Kelly.
The cast was great, wonderful job.
Thank you very much. Hi, Howard.